thank you very much for joining us on this webinar. We're hoping just to take about 30 minutes of your time to speak about the Feedbase expression of interest that we popped up onto the MLA Donor Company website. So the purpose of today is just really to take questions from people about the program of work, introduce any operational things around working with the MLA Donor Company, and I've also got Tom Davison with me on the phone, and he's able to talk through any technical questions that might arise. So the purpose of the webinar is just for you to probe with questions and make it a session that's useful for you and that you get something out of it. Just so you're aware, we are recording this webinar because we'd like to make it available to others. So if you're uncomfortable with that, please let me know. Otherwise, hopefully it'll become a great session for you. So welcome. If anyone is just a very brief introduction around the MLA Donor Company, just for those who aren't aware. MLA Donor Company is a wholly owned subsidiary of MLA, and we have the ability to match and co-invest funds on behalf of the Australian red meat industry. We're able to bring to the table some Commonwealth Government dollars, as long as we're able to find matching contributions from our partners. So it's a novel way of funding research and development, and we also get to work with our partners on delivering outcomes that benefit the Australian red meat industry and also deliver things that are of interest to our partners. So those that haven't participated before, we can have an offline discussion in more detail about what's being involved in an MLA Donor Company project entails. But effectively, it's a separate agreement whereby there's funding transferred from the partner to invest in research and development outcomes for the benefit of the industry. Tom, did you want to just do a quick Feedbase overview and the reason for the call?
Yeah, thanks, guys. So look, the main areas that we're talking about there, and this has all come from, well, substantially come from feedback from the panels, but also is sort of interplay here with strategically where MLA has got to itself with a number of planning forums, some of which people on the phone may have been on. First one is really about feed gap. I mean, this goes to the essence of trying to smooth out the quantity and quality on offer in the forest supply issue. I think the interesting thing here will be the interplay between this work and what you see as some of the fascinating changes in climate variability that's going on at the moment. So that's one area. The second one is just stable production systems. I guess MLA has been putting more emphasis on identifying new legumes, but also legumes that some of which are quite old in a sense, that were introduced many years ago, and their place in production systems. So we definitely see legumes as a really key issue going forward to deal with the variability in climate, some of the climate extremes we're dealing, but also, you know, how do we hold up the actual quality of the forage intake that animals have to deal with. Soil constraints, you know, we're not doing much on soil at the moment in MLA, and so just identifying what are the key issues that need to be addressed there in different regions. And I guess the next one is long-term resilience. Well, that does bring in the climate change seasonal variability issue and the interplay between that and the sort of feed gaps and several production systems components. And then the last one is about research, extension and producer capacity to achieve adoption. So the next one, which I probably know less about, is the mixed farming systems work, which I know there's a business plan being developed by Richard Apps and Cameron Allen around that issue. And this would sort of be it's really a follow-on from the sort of work that occurred in the grain and graze, but there's a business plan being developed. And I am not across where that report's at the moment. So look, they're the main areas. It's about the forage feed base and the mixed farming options guide. So any comments on any of those particular areas that we've identified? Any thoughts, suggestions? opportunities.
Yeah, Tom, it's Dave Henry here.
Yeah, hi man, how you going?
Hi mate, how you going? What I'm hearing is a focus in this bit around developing the forages and getting them implemented into a farming system, whereas I was sitting in the webinar this morning for the nutrition annual call, which seems to be more on management for utilisation of the feed base. Would that be a fair way of distinguishing where the two sort of programs of work have got their heads at?
Look, I wasn't on the one this morning, Dave, so, you know, I take your comments if that's how you're reading it. I think, we all know that it's one thing to produce forages that fill gaps or, you know, have a particular role in a feeding system. The other question, of course, is the whole utilisation question. So we know that the drivers of profitability really reside around utilisation of homegrown forage, Dave. So I guess it would make sense that there was some overlap between the two.
I guess the core of my question is in the Feedbase area with the donor company, are you wanting applications and innovations around, I don't know, technologies to improve the utilisation, grazing management of feedstuffs, you know, the integration of supplements in the system, for example, that are focused on that management utilisation side, assuming that the Feedbase will be there, available? I'm just trying to sort of see how far up that management workflow you want to focus in the Feedbase area.
Yeah, it's a good point. So we know that there's a couple of different answers to that, Dave. Actually, having the forage there in the first place and the quantum of forage available is a critically key issue for all the regions involved, and that's one. Two, then utilisation of that very much resides around how producers, you know, define their stocking rate and the grazing management within that. I think what you're talking about is how you might, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that how you might automate that management of that feed base, and I think that is a perennial challenge for our industry. So if you can come up with ways to simplify the management and utilisation of that forage base, well, great, you know. And I'm sorry I'm not across the other areas that we talked about this morning, but there's a whole bunch of work going on in various groups, which you're probably better aware of than I, about how you might use technology to automate that management. So if the two could be integrated, well, that would be a good place to get to, wouldn't it?
Well, it would, and so it comes down to it does come a bit to a process question as well about, you know, if we have a piece of work that we're thinking about and we're not sure whether it fits within the Feedbase and the MDC or whether it fits with the more general MLA annual call, any advice on how we position that? You know, perhaps it's talking to you, Tom, and to Nigel, for example, well, or Richard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, you know, I think the general advice is a lot more money in the MDC than the levy stream.
Okay.
Got it?
That's usually pretty attractive for some of us. Thanks, Tom. I'll let others talk.
Thanks, Dave. Has anybody else got a question?
So I've got a question. So I'm not sure if I've met from here.
Oh, who's that, sorry?
Yep, Edwina?
It's Beth Penrose from University of Tasmania.
Oh, apologies, sorry. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Hello. So I was wondering, for MDC money, what part of the farming community are you wanting to focus on? Are you wanting to focus on top producers, or are you wanting to focus on everybody?
Edwina, this is Beth, sorry. It's a perennial question, that one, isn't it? Personally, I think this is my view, and Sky might have another one, but my view is that research is about the leading edge of where we go and where we can go, that really drives productivity gains for the industry. So I trust that answers your question.
The other thing to consider, Beth, is when we're looking at MDC proposals, we're particularly interested in engagement with industry and the ability to adopt. Often that is easier to do with those leading edge producers because they are willing to make changes and try new ideas on farm. So ultimately we want creative ideas and successful ideas to flow through to all of the producers, but if you're looking for impact straight after or as part of the results of the R&D, then often it's easier to target that activity with the people that are willing to make those changes.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Have we got a question from somebody else?
This is like Q&A, Sky.
It is a little bit like that.
It sounds like you're getting off pretty easily, though, aren't you?
Dean Thomas here from CSIRO Perth. How are you going?
Well, thank you. How are you doing, Luke?
Yeah, good. I was involved with the developing a mixed farming systems program business plan, which is still ongoing. I guess I was just wondering if I could get a perspective on how the activities that are outlined in this terms of reference sort of relate to that activity.
Yeah, look, I apologise, I'm not quite across the mixed farming systems work as well as you might like. All I'm aware of is that Cam Nicholson's working in a project, I think, with CSU people on developing a plan on that front. There might be others who know better than me. But, you know, it's essentially, you know, it's the role for me, coming from first principles, it's about the role of crops in filling feed-based gaps. And we know that in some places, sometimes of the year, in terms of, you know, capturing nutrients and water, that crops, you know, can have a real role in that. So, you know, and sometimes crops give you that quantum lift in biomass production that you can't get from a pasture. So, now I'm not telling you anything new, but you know, it's really trying to understand, you know, where my crops fit in, given that in general crops can be more expensive to harvest and utilise than pastures. So, I'm sorry I can't give you any more specifics than that, but you might like to enlighten us about where you've got to with your planning.
Yeah, I guess that's the question, is just in terms of how to interact with these calls. So some of the work that was done with that business plan was in terms of some pre-experimental modelling. So there's some overlaps I can see between what's being proposed here and some of the areas that that was heading into as well. So yeah, possibly it would be worth me catching up with Cameron or the other members of the team as well to get some more details on that.
I think the you know, the power of some pre-modelling work that you might have done in any of these proposals would be pretty useful, guys. I think we've got our models to a stage now where we've got a lot more confidence in what they can tell us or predict us for options. So don't be afraid to put your pre-modelling work in any proposal that comes through.
The other thing to be mindful of is Cameron will be involved in the review of the technical review of the proposal. He's currently on some extended leave, so we've got a call date for this of the 30th of October. Please don't hesitate to even put in like a high-level summary of areas that you're interested in, and if you need to get some clarification as part of that application, you're welcome to do so. It'll still be reviewed in light of the need to have that additional conversation with some of our technical managers who may not be present for the current proposal period. Have we got any other questions?
Yeah, Robin Dobos here, New South Wales DPI. You've got the use of labour and labour-saving technologies in your mixed farming section. Wouldn't that be something across all of the necessary utilisation feed-based sector?
Yeah, of course it would. I guess it's just where the emphasis goes. So it's nominated there in the grazing, in the mixed system, but not in the other one. That's the point you're trying to make, Robin? Yeah,
I'm just wondering, because when you consider some of the labour-saving devices, say, in the mixed farming, they're complementary with pasture-based as well. So I was just sort of thinking that, you know, is it, as it's isolated within the mixed farming system section, if you had a particular proposal that was more pasture-based in that area, is that still a legitimate sort of target? Yeah, it would be. Labour's probably around 20% of the cost of a farming system. I guess labour was put in the other one because cropping is seen to be a much more labour-intensive exercise, than traditional grazed pasture systems. Where we only replace our pastures every 20 or 40 years. So I guess that's what's put in there. Okay, thanks for that.
If you find that your proposals need to address multiple areas and they're outside of one of the components, that's not a limitation. Just feel free to identify that as part of the application process, and we'll absolutely take that into consideration. This was based on feedback from producers of areas of concern, and that was the way that we've chosen to categorise, but it isn't limiting in any way.
Okay, yep, thanks for that.
That's okay. Have we got another question?
Can I ask another couple of questions? Is that okay?
Of course. Go ahead, Beth.
My first question is, and this may be my naivety, as I'm new to the Australian system, but are PhD students allowed to be included in these kind of calls? As in, can we, PhD students?
Postgrad, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we're happy to work with students as part of the project process. We do like them to be well supervised, so some of the conversations that we have with the partners' legal teams is how that gets managed within the university, but we're interested in building capability of the researchers that we're working with as part of the activities that we invest in, and just making sure that there's the right processes in place to ensure that you can protect the outcomes of the research while the work's being completed and you don't have any exposures in there, but otherwise very supportive.
Excellent. I had another question. Oh yes, in terms of sort of pasture agronomy, is that something that you guys are happy to fund? So for example, with when you identify new legumes, for example, you need to know how, or you need to be able to tell producers how to grow them to the best of their ability. Is that the kind of thing that might be funded?
Yeah, how to what, sorry, to the best of your ability?
How to grow them.
Grow them. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Look, it's not a simple story, is it? Once you start on the journey with a legume, there's you can generally nominate 20 questions around every new pastoral species that you can, that you want to bring in, and the issue is, how well are each of those questions can be answered for producers. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions around any new legume in any new system for sure.
Excellent, thank you.
Did you have another question for us, Beth?
No, sorry, that was my two.
Lovely, thank you. Was there somebody else on the line that wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, Sean Miller here from Adelaide Uni. Beth and Tom. Sky and Tom.
Hi, how are you doing, Sean?
Yeah, good, thanks. Mine's more a process question. Given that this calls for MDC funding, some may take a little bit longer to bring some partnerships along to the table past the October 30 deadline. What's the scope for later applications?
What we've decided to do, you're right, Sean, the MDC process is open year-round for applications. The reason that we've chosen to align with a call process on this particular portfolio of work was just there was an opportunity to build up this area of research, and we thought that as people will be looking and we're aware of the MLA call, that it would be appropriate to do the two together. I think if you're looking at submitting a proposal and you haven't yet identified what the source of funding might look like or how that might happen, that doesn't restrict you from just posting the idea and posting that to our attention, and we can work through it. The idea of the closing date was just to be able to evaluate them all together as a portfolio of activity, and then, but it doesn't necessarily restrict things from starting at any point in time once that match funding is made available. So we're well aware that with the donor company, having access to that means that sometimes you need a bit more time to build the program of work.
Excellent, thanks for that, Sky.
No problem. We got any more questions? No? Silence? As long as we've got everybody covered, that's great news. Thank you so much, everybody, for dialing in for the webinar. It's the first one we've done of these, and we welcome any feedback or suggestions. You're welcome to contact me for process questions. All my details are on the website. Or if you'd like to talk to one of our technical managers, again, you can get in touch with me or Tom Davison, and we can talk to you one-on-one about your proposals and what you're looking to submit. What we'll be doing is taking the recording of the webinar, popping that up onto our website in the next couple of days, so that if there's anything that you wanted to re-listen to or you needed colleagues to have a listen to, you're welcome to share. Otherwise, we're available to talk to you one-on-one before the applications close, and we can work up some opportunities.
So I think it's also significant, isn't it, Sky, that these terms of reference are not going out through the MLA in it or levy-based, but they're only going out through the MDC. So that's a significant thing about this webinar today.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Okay, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. You've done very well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.